Greetings, technology enthusiasts. I am Chandrahas and I am delighted to be here with you representing CyberBrainer. Do you not believe that the technology sector is advancing at an unprecedented rate, making this an opportune moment to acquire the skills that will facilitate your progress? With CyberBrainer, we are empowering you to take control of your own future. At CyberBrainer, we do not merely impart your interests. We assert that information is power, yet it is the application of knowledge that distinguishes you. Our courses are meant to equip you with essential skills, whether you are pursuing data science, understanding artificial intelligence, or delving into cybersecurity. Let us commence the session and seize the future today. Thank you.
We'll discuss today further related to compensation matrix. Can you see my screen related to compensation matrix? Yesterday you asked me a couple of questions, right? One question was related to how to get the merit rating majorly through the budget comparison and all. And the other question was with respect to for example, if I have a group of workers whose comparison is more than 100%, right? How do you manage them? We will discuss further with respect to that. See, if we talk about compensation matrix, it is of two types. One is classic compensation matrix and the second one is total value compensation matrix. Talking about the first one, classic compensation matrix. Classic compensation matrix come into picture, or I can say this compensation matrix is based on rating scales that we have potential rating, compare ratio and the retention rating or some add-ons just like parent segment. This is completely based on that. Normally this is one of the major one that we use, but talking about this total value compensation matrix, right? This has the custom calculation that calculates or evaluates different type of attributes that we have. Like for example, let's take an example of a worker who doesn't have any review rating. For him, the classic compensation matrix will not work, and that scenario, total value compensation matrix will come into picture. This is majorly talking about compensation matrix total value compensation matrix, right? Let's discuss one by one and I will brief you. In this you will have answer for one of your question. Let's discuss first about the compensation matrix. Let me give you an example with respect to stock. In the stock, I have a certain target. Let's take an example. 10,000 is the target that I have. It will go from 5,000 to 10,000 depending upon the different gradients. That is the way. It's like literally like not to be, like not performing, it will be 0. Similarly, if I talk about person also works in a similar way. But here only the things that comes into picture is, let's take an example. We have a base salary of a worker which is around 100,000. Here is the composition matters. We'll define the minimum and maximum value. Let's take an example of 2% to 3 cents. Depending upon the base pay, and here the base pay is irrational. It can be totally a probability number because the 10% is literally the applicability that we do, which is further multiplied by the rating percentage. Correct? Now let's take an example of weighted. If I talk about weighted matters, it can be used for amount of percent based either bonus plan or merit plan. Normally talking about this weighted matters. If I have the minimum and maximum target, maybe I will have some factor that I want to use. Depending upon the percentage amount that I have, let's take an example. I have a like normally if I talk about variable bonus, right? That we have. Normally for that, what we do say normally, we say like the target is in between up to maximum 10%, 5% or 20%, right? It depends. Apart from that, we can define a weighted matrix for defining the rates. Let me open up. Let's take an example. I have a plan wherein my target is, let's assume 66% is the maximum target that I have. Let's consider any worker who has around 100,000 as a base pay. Now talking about his rating, let's assume his rating falls under a 3. We have a rating scale of 1 to 5 wherein this worker rating is 3. For rating 3, the minimum and maximum weightage that I want to consider is in between 50% to 75%. This is the maximum that is going to be there. If I consider in this way, if I want to calculate the recommended range, how this will be calculated. Talking about 50% is nothing but 0.5, talking about 75% is nothing but 0.75. If I talk about 100,000, talking about percentage that we have, let's 0.26. Talking about the another percentage that we have for this one, 50%, it will come under 0.5. This will give me the minimum value. It will come around 100,000. That is multiplied by 0.6 cent, multiplied by 0.6. It will come around 3,000. This is like something we do like. It is the similar math of how you consider the variable pay for the employee, right? If you are going like 10% of their discretionary from their base as stated, with further multiplication of the target achievement target percentage multiplied by base salary proration rules, right? The typical logic is applying here, the typical formula. The only thing is like it's going to set up the threshold value of how much the weighted, we call it as weighted average numbers, right? What you're trying to say. Weighted adjustments. Let's look into one by one. Default currency, I'm setting it as USD. Rating scale. I'm going to consider 0.3 rating scale or 5 rating scale. Let's see what is available here. This is the 6 rating scale, 7 rating scale that I have. Let me see if, in case I will not get anything else, I will choose any one of them randomly. Low average to it. I'm just randomly connect using anything for now. Include potential rating. If in case we want to consider potential rating apart from this, we can include this. We can use this table, include comparison. I want to include this comparison, or they should understand. Include retention rating. Retention rating is the last 3 rating of the employee right from the tenure. Sorry, what did you say? What do you mean by retention rating here? What is the larger? You said something related to retention rating. What did you say? Even the previous rating and consistency of the employee. Is that what you are? Apart from that, the main thing that comes into picture is, let's take an example of, we have some workers in the company, right? Some group of workers are categorized as we have to retain them. Alright? Like key critical employees. There are different group of employees in which, if we know, like if in case they didn't get a required bonus or increment, the chances are less that they will stand. They are really a critical resource that we have. This is what those group of people. And we also use multiple targets, and we need to check that also because not everybody. Talking about this multiple targets option that we have, if in case we use this checkbox, right? Normally what this will do is, if in case I want to apply this to specific group of employees, which has multiple criteria, or like you can see right now, eligibility rule comes as an empty here, right? If in case I use this multiple target, right, I have an option. I can define the eligibility rule specific to this group of people. If in case anyone is having one or more eligibility rules and I want to consider those, I can mention the eligibility rule here. I'm not using any eligibility rule. Talking about parent segments, right? Your voice is breaking, Raj. I'm not able to hear you. Can you repeat me? What I was briefing about, this include parent segment, is when we opt in for this right. We'll have the details with respect to the parent segment that we have used. And here you can use the parent segment. There is an additional option that comes up with a parent segment right. I hope you remember when we were doing the configuration, the grade proof, we had the slide. It depends if, in case we want to use, we can opt in. It'll only give you the multiple range segment. If you want volume in median and max, you don't actually level it. You can just go with 3. Talking about this right now, we can have the competition. You can see, this is how they have segregated it in the compare ratio range. This median max is the number that we have to add in. For low grade, see, they have defined it in the compare ratio for different quarters, right? Like, for example, for someone who is having low grading, the review rating that we choose is low, good, low average and good rating. That was the range that we had. Here we have to define based on the compare ratio. Right. What is going to be the median max? Like, for example, if someone is in the low, we can keep that as 0. If someone is in the average and if they are in the compare ratio of 91 cent and under 91 to 90 to 999, 200 or over 100. These are the various segments that get created, where you will have the minimum and maximum. We need to auto compute it right. This is a manual exercise based on the. Apart from that, if in case I would not have this, use this parent segment right. What if allow the system Workday to auto compute it? It will not do. Now let me look into the another one. Let me show you the one which is already created here. This is the one which we have already looked into, right? They have mentioned here respective 3-point scale. It was only a 3-point scale. I didn't have anything else. This is how they have mentioned that for Indian employees. We can have a currency requirement also, although it is. We can update the currency. Normally, I will briefly like how do we do that for different currency. We normally set up a default currency that we have here. Apart from that, we will use the eligibility rule. Normally you can see here for United States, right? Or for another, like for example, here we have India and US, right? For US, the currency is going to be USD, but by default, the reference currency is going to be GBP. That's how mainly we can set it up. Can you also show me, like, how do you do it in percentage setup and also in weighted average setup? The options decreases. Let me do for another one, like percentage one. Can we also have a separate? Do we have a separate session of job catalog creation? I think was that in the because I mentioned in the thing, I have informed Venkat also. That's why I asked you. No, but I have not got any information related to that. What would you be able to teach me that job catalog? Because I'm referring in job catalog. Let me be straight. I wanted to create automations in Workday. Automation report in Workday put into job catalog. For example, let me take a scenario for you. We are having a global expansion of our new product. We under the product, right? Product is our technically more like a business unit. Under the unit, we wanted to subcategorize our employees based on our organizational structure. We wanted to put certain employees and we wanted to build their job architecture like their job code, grade system and everything, and create a job catalog and based on a hierarchy they refer to. And based on that, that will be our step 1, create a job evaluation for them. And also, once you've done that, how do you integrate your salary bands for them? How do you build a salary bands for them in Workday, and how you make it automated and create it as a default value? For example, we are creating this job catalog for, say, like a new person, say like Chief Growth Officer, or like we have this product where we wanted. We never had a UI UX designer. And we wanted to create a job role for a UX designer. This is never enough job. And this is part of our global expansion project. And we are going to have similar UX designers based on the L1, L2, L3 of their internal job grades going forward. Now I wanted to create in the system in Workday, like everything, like an individual job catalog for each of the job roles, like the positions and based on the position. The Workday should take the external data that we uploaded in AIB and configure what would be the pay range for them by default, more like automation model. Normally what you're saying is like, let's take an example. You're introducing some jobs, right? With respect to your expansion, like you mentioned, you are a UX engineer. Now, what you're expecting here is you are expecting with respect to that job, whatever pay range is going to be there. That is something which you do not want to enter manually. There would be a third-party system from where the data will be coming to that respective. For example, I'm using a third-party tool like Willis Towers Watson or on Stratford for the market data. And usually I import the market data ranges in my Workday, right? In AIB inbound and outbound IBs. And this helps me to not mix up with the data, but Workday will segregate the data as I upload using the import function in Workday. And it segregates, and by comparing with the internal pay range data, what is already created with that of the market range. And it will give you the min, medium and max, if I'm not wrong, that I got it. Just for this. Normally what happens is like the one I showed you, right? Competition grade and competition grade profile. That is the place where all the data will come into picture. You have an option to just put in the min and max. It will auto-calibrate the other values that we have. Like I have told you, like in normally, there we had the pay range segment where we have chosen 4 or 3, depending upon our options. It will segregate it. Now here you are mentioning. In this scenario, what happens is integration comes into picture. The integration consultant will integrate that grade profile with respect to that third-party system that we will have, because from it is going to the pay ranges and everything is going to come from a third party. Right. This is more of an integration job rather than talking about the compensation related stuff. I will tell you about one project. Like we had one client I have already briefed in the past. Normally the pay ranges for all the job profiles that they had. It was updated before the COVID period, and after the COVID period things were changed drastically. Right? They wanted to update the system and be on sync with the current standard, or I can say as per the current market trends. For that, what they did is they introduced a third-party system wherein they wanted to update all the job profiles, pay ranges that they had. Normally this value, what we have to do is we have to create an integration. After through the integration, the data is loaded. That's how it happens. The other option is doing it entirely through the EB, but it depends upon the complexity. Because if it's a matter of few job profiles, we can handle it manually. But if in case the data is the number of job profiles that we are talking about and everything that is huge. And if we want to do it directly through the third-party system, it's completely with respect to the integration. I have a question here. Thank you much for bringing me that. That gives me a new perspective. For a bigger organizations, right? Say like Cognizant is one of my ex-company. And where we don't use only ON's data, we use multiple survey providers' data. We have released our support European countries, and we use Bradford and Moses data for American countries and Latin Americas. In such cases, we use multiple things and we predominantly depend on the EIB because it was easy for us rather than integrating multiple tools. We do it through the EIB where we download from the Radford the entire data and we upload it. We import the data in the EIB in Workday and the Workday computes it. Usually, I just wanted the similar automation because I'm not just going to stick up with Radford as my survey partner alone. I'm also going to bring one more survey partner for a few of the complex roles because Radford doesn't have certain countries we predominantly operate in. I'm also speaking with another survey provider like Mercer to bringing that. Here the integration will not help me because I integrate one if I'm going to, but here I'm having multiple survey providers. I want to do morally in EIB basis. Right. See, normally the reason why we do not prefer integration here in the scenarios. Integration is something which we prefer when I have to do this job again and again on a periodic manner. Let's take an example on every quarter or on every month or in 8 daily. This is something which doesn't happen this much frequently. Right? And apart from that, doing an integration is a bit of an expensive job. Absolutely. That's the reason why I said right. It goes through manual process the way that I have shown you. I have already briefed you how it is done manually. Right? Like we can go ahead and we can, or else we can go ahead and we can update the pay ranges. Apart from that, if in case that is something which we can do when we have few job profiles to make a few of the grades or few of the pay ranges that we have to make the changes. But let's take an example. I want to update for multiple ones. Right. Like there are 10 or 20 grade profiles within 10 or 20 grade profiles. I have different countries. For them, I cannot do it manually. In this scenario, we do it through EIB. We have a EI template that is available. Alright. There is a standard format like how we can update that. Normally, whatever data you get from the third-party system for every respective one, we go ahead and we can update it. That's all. Normally, one question that I would ask is it going to be more at the job profile level or how the setup is currently in your system? Or it is more at the grade level like you mentioned L1, L2, L3, whatnot. Whatever grading system you might have. The current grade system is very simple because it's more like a startup and we are having a global expansion in few countries. We don't have, typically, when I joined, we don't have a release star setup or a Mercer setup which is like logically implied by industrial standards. But what they did here is they have 3 clusters. My organization structure has 3 clusters. We have like triangle, 1 as the highest and 4 as the least. And they have triangles all under individual contributors. And we have expert who are at the square, which for us, the least and 1 as the highest are all under the expert track. And we also have circles where 4 is the least and 1 as the highest, where 1 is all compared as senior vice presidents. And managing directors of particular country like country managers and general managers. They are all under the managerial suite of circles 1 for till 1. And we all have the management board like CFO, CCRO, CEO and all under circle 0. They don't want to have any complexity here. They wanted to have a very flat-based organization. Now the problem comes here, where the pay range of management circle 1 till 4 is equivalent to that of the expert trap of square 4 till 1. What my point? The thing is like in irrespectively, a person who is doing the functional role like a senior manager will be paid equivalently to a non-functional technical person who is somewhere like a principal architect or an engineering director kind of guy who is having based on a product-based setup, right? He will be the product person. He will introduce and implement projects. But the person at a senior manager, he will be functioning as a manager, managing a whole lot of team. He will not be building the product, but he will be building his team. But both does equivalently the same under the job evaluation. They are equivalently paid with a similar pay range. They might not get, for example, the persons these two job description has similar pay ranges. Say, like they have a pay range of minimum of 2 lakhs till that of 5 lakh as a max and keeping 3 lakhs as a threshold, as a midpoint. If that is the case, a senior manager need not be as similarly paid as at a 4 lakh equivalent to a principal architect or a director principal engineer at a 4 lakh. A principal engineer can be at a 2 lakh itself, but their ranges are similar. Now my question is, we are going to bring in more such job positions newly. In that case, I am going to build a new job profiling and I want my system, my Workday system, to recognize it and auto-build utilizing. We have an overall salary bands created. I wanted the system to identify that and create a pay range set task for it. How I do it? See pay ranges, segment will not be created automatically. That is something which we have to do it. If you're thinking like based on the new ones that I'm job profiles that I'm creating. Normally that's not how it works. If you remember, during the first session I've already mentioned, you like normally the pay competition grade. Normally we call it, you can call it, as the pay and segment that we are creating that gets linked to the job profiles. Let me feel more like, let me talk like a noob now. As if I don't know anything on a total rewards, I can just put my mind directly to you. The thing is like I wanted say, like this is what my ideology. I wanted your expert advice here. My ideology is there is a new role altogether in my company itself. We are evaluating the job, analyzing the person will be fitting under the square or a circle or a triangle. That is where the evaluations take place. And now we identify this person particularly. This say like the UX designer belongs to an individual contributor but based on the level, like a senior UI designer falls under a triangle, one which is a senior most in the individual contributor level. I wanted similarly, I have literally like 50 profiles. And each of the 50 profile, I do the similar manual job evaluation for each of this using my point factor method and I create it. And now I have my ranges of things. Now, as a next step, I'm going to build a salary bands for them. How do I do the salary bands in Workday or do I do it manually and upload it in Workday for the system to understand and allocate it with the respective pay ranges for each of the job profile? Or again, my question number 2 is apart from not if I'm not able to build a salary bands. Just like how you showed in the initial session. Should I create a manual ranges for each of the job profiles? For example, I'm having 50 job profiles for 50 job profiles. I will be manually entering the min and max pay ranges, isn't it? See for all of them, like let's take an example. You mentioned me. There are 50 job profiles that you have in picture, right? And I need to perform a job cataloging where I need to have an automation. Where do you want to understand, like you mentioned, about 50 different job profiles, right? You want to have a separate ranges for each and every job profiles that you have in the picture, or how it is like. See, it need not be a separate ranges, certain range. For example, I gave you an example. A senior manager's pay range will be equivalent to a principal engineer's, like engineering manager's pay range. It can be equivalent. Only their base salary can be differed based on their experience and skill sets. But the pay range is similar for a senior manager and engineering manager because engineer manager is more of product building. And say, like senior manager is more like managing the team. But they both equivalently do similar works and they are valued the same in the company. Currently the pay ranges that has been set up right. It is depending upon the grade profile that they have, or it is completely upon the job profiles. I think it will be on the grade profiles only, right? Profiles on the levels. It is more of grade profiling, right? Normally I will tell you about different scenarios, right? It's completely up to you. Normally I can understand like you are having a different like the scenario that you mentioned, right? There is a senior manager and there is who is managing the team on other stuffs. Whereas there is another group of people actually who are mainly introducing the product or completing to the product side. They both are having the same range and they're falling on the same grade. Correct? Is let's say like head of products, which is that of a senior manager. Head of product is a person who takes care of the product, right? In and out of the product. He belongs to a circle 3 and a square 3, which is at a expert range. One thing I want to understand here is the third party. The third party one that you are referring about, from where you getting the range. What is the range difference between these two? Range difference. Like you mentioned, like you have a third party system from where you have the range. And the range differences comes. Is it way more or it is just nearby how it is like? I see it at a 50th percentile, 50th percentile. I keep the threshold of 50th percentile, which is my company's compensation philosophy of having benchmarked at the 50th percentile of their base of the total. It doesn't come under total compensation, but it will be coming under the base salary of 50th percentile from one range to, and we match typically that. In this scenario, see, you have to review it clearly and you have to understand right. Either because see if they're falling under the same grain, and if in case the difference is more, either you can do one thing, you can introduce a new grade separately for segregating them. That is one thing you can do. That is one of the main thing that you can do, like talking about right now, like how many competition grades do you have? In how many levels? How many levels? Totally 9 levels. 4 plus 4 total plus 1 of management, totally 13. In this scenario, if in case you feel like that, you can review all the grades that you have right. Based on that, if in case you see like if the gap is way more than the median value, and that's normally we suggest to introduce a new grade. That is what is your grades, right? You're asking me to introduce 3 new grades. But the question is, the org setup itself is built more like a narrow. It's not like a narrow-based organization. It's more based organization, especially like a person, like our organization, where product is screened. It will disrupt. My fear is it should not disrupt the organization structure. You got my point, because in my organization structure is more like a Spotify model. We have tribes and scouts. A person who will be. You know the Spotify model, right? It is not a hierarchy model where you can introduce tweener grades. In this scenario, you can do one thing. You can change the criteria, right? No need to introduce a new grade. You can make the manager at one level. You can keep the manager wherever it is, because if you will decrease anyone's level, that will not sound good. Whereas rather than doing that, what we can suggest is talking about the product side people. We can increase the range. That's what mainly, that's the question I'm having, because I cannot touch the grading. The grading is stagnant here. The leveling aspect is stagnant here. I cannot introduce a tweener grade in this aspect, but I wanted to make the adjustments in the pay ranges. The other option is, but see if you are going to make the adjustment in the pay ranges, right? Oh, in that scenario, what can be done as? Can we one more option? That one more option that we have is, let's keep them in the same grade. Let's not do anything in that. Let's only change the pay range that we have. We can create criteria wherein for this specific job profile, this is going to be the pay range. If this specific job profile, this is going to be the pay range. We'll keep them in the same grade, but we will change the eligibility rule, right? And will define the new ranges that no employee will have any major impact. That is what, in the market system, only it will have. Talking about this, how it can be done. It's like normally in the grade profile segment, I showed you, right? Normally, I have shown you how to segregate it depending upon the countries, right? Like, for example, this worker belong to this country. The currency will be this, and this is going to the pay range, right? Rather than doing that, what can be done is, you can segregate it. Whatever eligibility rule is there, let it be there. And add on one more condition in the eligibility rule with respect to the job profile. Like if this is the job profile, this will be the pay range. If for other job profile, you have to add few more. Let me show you. And if I have got your ideology right. No, let me show you, you will have a better understanding. This is what was in my mind. Let me put that while you search. You are suggesting me, saying like, for this particular range, you have your range penetration value. For example, salary range differences between, say like a expert track to that of a manager, a TAC will be 50%. Can you repeat again? For example, for an individual track to an expert track range, right? The range difference can be 50% each, and from an expert track to a managerial track, it can be 75%. That one from the percentage between the min and the max will be 10% of one tweener grade to another tweener grade. Say like triangle 1 to that of a triangle 2, within the individual contributor will be 10% of an increment. But the same when it comes to an individual contributor level when compared to an expert track level. From a triangle to square 4, it will be with the range of 30% because the person was longer an individual contributor and he has increased responsibilities and moving into an expert track, which is like subject matter expert. The salary range level difference can be up to 30% from triangle 1 to that of a square 4. That can be what you say, like can be adjusted while we have a stiff leveling. Let's take an example. This is the grade that you have right. Let's take an example for a manager level. Probably while I create a compensation package right. I will do it for manager, expert and individual track. Let's compare the pay range in our upcoming session. Probably I will do it as this week. Here we have an option to add on our own minimum and maximum range. That is there. Right? Let's take an example. As of now, there is one segment right, wherein you are having those managers and the product side, all of them within the same range. What I was briefing you as, don't make any changes to the profile, grading or anything. Right. Just make changes to the eligibility. Let me check. What I was briefing is you can update in the eligibility rule. I can exclude the product side. Right? I'm not going to change anything. I can exclude the profile them and I can keep the range whatever I want. And for the product, people in the same grain profile, I will introduce them and I will exclude those managers from here and I will have it that it will not get mixed up and they will have both. They both will have separate ranges. Now, although correct me if I'm wrong, although they will be in the same grade, they will be in the same compensation grade, whereas their pay ranges will be different. Their pay ranges will be linked to their position, but not their grades. The grades will be stagnant. Got? I would say C, talking about the compensation matrix, talking about the percentage one that you are briefing about, there is no major difference. Please do like, share and subscribe to our channel.